Oh, hello, hello, hello to this interview.
Is this audio or it's like you're writing it?
I'm intending to write it up as an interview
Okay.
and not do it as a podcast type thing because it wasn't intended that way. I did want to. I'm recording it just so that I can refer back to it without having to write down everything we say, and
Okay.
B, maybe I want to learn that maybe it does become audio in the future. So I'm trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
So basically, I think I mentioned to you, the idea is that people who are doing creative stuff, the ones that I know at least, are doing it in a lot or most or in all cases because of the meaning that it gives them in their own life and people that they know. It means something to others in their lives that they do this kind of work where they're all fully aware that they could do something else with those hours and it would be more lucrative or more whatever it would be, more relaxing, I don't know. But we continue to do this work because it's more important than those other things. So that's the idea behind the meaning creators, and that's where I wanted to ask you what it means to you to be. But well, before I make any assumptions, we'll back up and just ask you some questions.
Okay.
So tell us your name. Tell us what you do.
So Effie Rinsky. Rabbis call me Ephraim. My parents call me Ephraim. Um,
Readers call you.
E.Z. Rinsky. Uh, and just don't call me in the middle of the night.
You had to get that out of you.
Yeah.
Zing.
Yeah, I'm a writer. I write. I wouldn't say I'm a mystery writer, even though my first two books are mysteries. I think I'm a book writer because the next one, I'm not going to write any more mysteries. Like the next thing I'm working on is not a mystery novel. I'm about to
Are
sneeze, I
you
think.
talking about what it is?
Sure. Hold on.
That's that's some scary stuff. Talking.
Yeah, coughing's more
Thriller.
scary.
It's a coughing thriller.
Um, yeah, I can talk about it. Sure.
Okay. Well, we'll get there.
Uh,
Continue on your train of thought, and we'll
yeah,
come back to that.
sure, sure. Um, yeah, I'm a writer, and then I do other stuff, sort of. In my mind, is sort of tangential to that. I have a day job at a tech company here in Israel. Well, I'm working I'm a product marketing manager, whatever that means. If I figure it out, I'll let you know. And a musician.
I didn't know about the music part.
Yeah, yeah, too bad it's not audio. I got something going on here.
Well, now maybe it will be. We just might
Yeah,
have to include the video. I'm not sure about that one.
yeah, please don't.
Okay, so you are an American in Israel, or maybe an Israeli that used to be an American.
Yeah.
And how did you get here? Why did you get here? And why did you want to be a mystery or whatever you're becoming kind of writer in Israel?
I think the two things are kind of unrelated in my
Mm.
mind. Like, I moved to Israel. I always kind of knew I wanted to live here. Um, and about 4.5 years ago, the timing was really good. Um, just like my job in the States, I was teaching economics and statistics at CUNY in New York, and like my contract was running out, but I was going to get paid over the summer, like for not working. I was like,
How did you get to that as a
uh,
musician writer?
yeah, Yeah, I originally thought I wanted to be like like a banker, one of those assholes. And so I do have a I have a master's degree in economics,
Wow.
and finance. And yeah, when I lived in New York and I was writing for 5 years there, I was teaching statistics and economics at CUNY, City University of New York. Um, so the timing was good, and yeah, just a happier person here generally.
Why? What made you want to be an asshole banker or finance? Not that all bankers. I just had this conversation with a friend of mine actually,
Yeah,
and saying that a lot of them are because feel like they need to fit into this mold of a shark killer, take all, and some of them are just so deadly miserable in their lives and what they're doing. And
yeah,
I think there are a slim, there's like in everything, a slim layer of people in finance or banking or whatever else that just really love it. They just love what they're doing, and that's why they do it. What was it for you? What got you to that point where you put yourself on an asshole path?
so I got really into economics in high school, my senior year of high school, and like really was like I really like kind of the puzzle solving aspect of like economics and finance. I still do actually. I still like, and I've always liked numbers, and it's always kind of, I was I always found it really fun, basically, um, all that kind of stuff. But it was sort of when I realized like what a life, like the natural progression of that is like, working in finance or something. And when I realized like what that kind of job is like, it's not like, getting to solve fun puzzles all day. Like it's like 70 hours a week
Grind.
of cutthroat, yeah,
Hmm.
competitive money, all
Hmm.
about money. So, yeah, just as I finished that master's, I realized like I really didn't want to do that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
And then what?
Uh,
And then what was the transition to writing? Where did that come from?
I always kind of was into writing. I wrote for my high school newspaper. Uh, I read a lot as a kid, but yeah, I wasn't really very serious
What did you
about
read?
writing.
What did you like to read?
Um, my real first love was science fiction.
Give me some
Uh,
names.
yeah, Asimov was my favorite, I think. Um, I'm just looking at my bookshelf right now, see if I remember it, if I have any of this stuff. I really, like Douglas Adams, all the Hitchhiker's guidebooks. Still like those. I don't think I understood them the first two times I read them. Actually, definitely didn't. Uh, Stuff. All the Orson Scott Card,
Mm,
uh,
nice.
Margaret Atwood, uh,
Hmm.
Arthur C. Clarke,
Hmm.
Robert Heinlein.
Were you ever
Uh,
were you ever a Crichton fan?
no, I mean, I'm not. I'm just not that I'm not. I've never given him a chance. I've never read
Mm.
his stuff.
I when I was a kid, when I was like early teens, I was like devotee of Michael Crichton. I just loved his books, and yeah, I don't know what it was about his writing that I connected so much. I even liked some of the stuff that kind of slipped through the cracks, like Disclosure. And I still think about that book sometimes, which is
Never
about
read it.
that was a book about it's about like reverse sexual harassment in corporate Silicon Valley in the 90s, where the female boss basically pressures her employee who they used to be in a relationship together with.
Oh, they made a movie out of this, didn't
Yeah,
they?
they yes. And I think it was, I think Demi Moore was in it, and possibly Michael, what's his name? Kirk, Michael Douglas, I think. I need to
Okay.
look at that. But yeah, Michael Crichton, I mean, if you think about Jurassic Park, if you think about The Sphere, I think it was just called Sphere. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that was a great book. Andromeda Strain, speaking to what we're all going through today.
yeah.
Um, anyways, I always loved him, but I also loved. I never got into Asimov. I loved what I read of Clark.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was also a bit of a. I had a little bit of that sci-fi hook. Not, I wasn't a total junkie for it, but I was into it. So just
Um,
sorry, go on. So you were
oh,
a reader as a kid, reading
yeah.
sci-fi.
Yeah, lots of stuff, but that was my real uh, passion. But I wasn't serious about writing in any way until I think I was 22.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, uh, so I don't want to get into this whole story because like every time I've done an interview, like it's become about this. So I'll just
Mhm.
mention to you, but I
Well, now
just,
we're gonna get into it. So
yeah, I'll
you just
mention it
set
to you, but
yourself for getting into it, just so you know.
I just don't find it. It's like kind of like it's like a fun, sticky story, but
Okay,
I don't want to
go
talk
for it.
about it again. Is that I
Quick
was
version.
after this master's degree, I had like this quarter life crisis, and
Hmm.
so for like half a year I was a street performer.
Hmm.
I was like doing I had like a one man band act on the street
Mm.
where and like I don't know. I always talk about that because that's sort of people enjoy hearing about that. I don't think it's particularly interesting, really. Anyway, I think I was reading some book during that. I was
Hmm.
reading some great books, but I remember I read something that was really crappy, actually,
Hmm.
and I was like, I could do this.
What
Like
were the great What were the great books?
the one I was reading, I don't remember which one it was that really. I do remember actually. I just finished A Confederacy of Dunces,
Oh yeah,
which is
amazing,
like
amazing.
amazing. Actually, I read 7/8 of it or so because, and then I accidentally put it in the washing machine. I didn't read the end of it, but I think I got the idea.
Something appropriate about that.
Yeah.
Laundering your.
And then I was reading David Foster Wallace's essays, supposedly fun thing I'll never do again,
Hmm.
and those were just like that, like really, like some of those just like hit me. There's
Hmm.
not emotionally, because they're not so emotional.
Yeah.
They just thought they're fucking brilliant, and it was like a combination of that and some other junky book at the time I was reading, which can't remember. And I was just thinking I could write like I could do this. Like I could write a great book about street performing. So that was what I tried to do first, and I sent it out. Like that's when I really decided like I'm going to do this. So I wrote a manuscript about street performing, like a sort of
What was the
quasi
plot? What was the
memoir.
story? Okay, it's
Yeah, it
memoir.
was like quasi memoir, but
Okay.
very exaggerated and really not at all true to life, but with like a lot of kind of tips and anecdotes. And I moved to New York to like try to, I don't know, get that published. I thought it would help. Eventually it did, but not for quite a long time. So that didn't get published. And I
Moved to
wrote,
New York from.
I just went Boston, and then I was traveling for like 8 months, and then I moved to New York. Yeah. Um, So basically, I lived in New York for like 5 years, and I wrote like three full manuscripts that didn't get published. Till I wrote Palindrome, which was the first one that did get published. Um, yeah, the street performing thing is the thing I don't find that for some reason, I always end up talking about. But let's just leave it out because I feel like it's. We've talked about that before.
Hmm. I mean, some of these things are part of the journey. They're episodes that can be. You can put more weight into them. You can put less weight into them, and whatever.
Yeah,
But Palindrome, which I've started to read, it's on my Kindle. Um, I don't. I think it was it a preface. It wasn't chapter one. It was a preface, right, where the woman's on a chair tied up, and something very terrible is about to happen, and that was. It was a white knuckle scene. It was really a gripping moment.
yeah.
So where did it come from? Like, where is it a series? Is there a recurring protagonist there? Where's the and are you still connected to that book? And if it is a series, that series.
So there's two books. The first one's called Palindrome. The second one's called The Binding. With the same two protagonists, and they're sort of the second is a continuation of the first. At one time, I had a third one sort of outlined, but sort of at this point, other stuff interested me, and I would write a third one if someone offered me enough money, and it'd be fun. But as long as I'm not getting paid, I'm going to write something else.
Why? Well, you just got tired of the series, or you?
I mean, I never really liked mystery novels. Like I've read very few. The only ones I read were sort of in research for this. And the reason that I wrote mysteries was because I realized I got feedback from the manuscripts I got that didn't go anywhere. Was my main problem was keeping keeping the plot and theme consistent throughout, keeping the cadence, and sort of making it holistic. And so I just really just decided to write a mystery just because it would force me into a certain sort of structure, right? Because like you have to have it outlined from the start.
Yeah.
The mystery keeps it rigid, and so that's really why I decided to do that. And then from there, I thought, well, what's the most interesting sort of, if I was a detective, what's the most interesting sort of question I'd be after? And I thought, well, I don't know what happens after we die. And then that's where that came from. Yeah, I don't have any particular passion for mystery novels. I don't think a good one, like a great one. I do love some of them. There's one it's called Rosemary. Let me Google it. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Nah, that's not what it's called. I did read some great ones and sort of in preparation for this, and like when I was researching. But yeah, overall, it's not like an area I'm passionate about. But
So where's your passion in writing and books?
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed writing those two books and was really into it.
Yeah. Well, now you'd mentioned that the third book being the thing you're working on now. That's a bit of a break from the mystery. So where are you looking?
So I actually have a manuscript more or less complete right now, which I've just started shopping around, which is actually kind of timely, given all this shit that's going on in the world. It's about a pandemic kills everybody. that kills everybody except for 11 people who survive on a cargo ship in the middle of the Atlantic.
Wow. Okay, that's a premise.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine people are getting back to you at this point.
So I don't know. Some people, I got a few kind of nibbles. It's funny, like, 6 weeks ago, I thought, somebody's going to eat this up right away.
Yeah.
And then, and now when I think about it, if I was in a publisher's shoes, I'd be like, nobody wants to read about this right now. That's like the last.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's hard to say because I was just talking about this with a colleague in PR. We're pitching people, and media are really picking up some of our clients who are doing Corona-related stuff quick. Like we're getting people on CNN to comment on this and that, and there's a lot of appetite in media. But we have a client who's a writer, an author, who wrote a memoir, and his memoir is not about a virus, but it is about overcoming something very difficult, which is blindness. And in the course of his struggle to overcome, his mission is to eradicate blindness forever. And in the course of this mission, he actually met with Jonas Salk many years ago, the creator of the polar bear. sulk.
Oh,
Um, so we're debating that. Is there how much appetite? We're because his publisher is pushing him not to move the pub date, and he's thinking possibly he should move the pub date because that's the question. Do
hmm.
people want to read about this? Do people want to connect to this? Is this going to drown out everything else? What's this going to do? And I guess the answer is nobody really knows. And I think that's the interesting point, is that with all books, nobody ever knows. Nobody ever
Hmm.
knows when it's, a Donna Tartt book doing really, really well, where her previous book didn't really do well, and then the previous one to that really did well. And no one ever knows when it's some major writer whose book kind of falls with a thud, or some unknown writer that goes, you know, completely explosive, viral in the culture.
No pun intended.
Yeah. So we only know when the book is out there. That's the only way we'll ever know. And publishers don't know more than we do. They
Hmm.
just have to pretend that they do. And I think most of them acknowledge it, at least deep down inside, that it's not a science, no matter how much we want to make it one, it's just not. Unless the only time it's ever a science in this business is when people are doing massive series after series after series, and they're just feeding a beast. They're feeding a genre
Yeah.
beast. You can kind of rely on that. But
Hmm.
anyways, so I mean, as an aside, maybe we're not going to include this in the interview, but I think what you might consider doing is trying to pitch yourself to media. Um, I don't know
Hmm.
how exactly, but if there is more appetite, then it could be an interesting story about the guy who happened to write the book about a pandemic. I mean, come on, that's
Yeah.
that's man bites dog, And it, the other thing would be, I think, an excerpt. If you can do an excerpt
Yeah.
quickly, that would help. That an excerpt in an op-ed. And what
Hmm.
over the course of writing this book, you've probably thought about pandemics more than 98% of people, 99% of people. So you have a unique perspective, and you talk about what you learned from the book, from your own book, from the
Yeah.
thought experiment that the book is.
It's pretty good. It's good. Because I was thinking, like, it makes sense that nonfiction is people are eating it up, but fiction, I'm just myself, I would just want to escape into anything but the angle you're talking about makes sense.
Yeah, but actually, I don't know where I read this. I'll try to hunt it down. But what I read is that people are buying more fiction right now than nonfiction. They're not actually them jumping into the nonfiction. They
Hmm.
want fiction, and I don't know if that means they want virus-related fiction. I've definitely have seen the movies pop up on Netflix. They're being pushed, Contagion and Outbreak and whatever. And I think people want to know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
They want to know that they want to put some distance between themselves and the thing by putting it into fiction. So if they can read
Hmm.
about this as fiction, it's almost like they can pretend the real thing is a bit fiction as well, which
Okay.
it kind of is in a way. I mean, it's not, and it is, and that's the crazy part of it. Because when I look out I took my kids for a walk today in the fields behind our house, and it was like the most idyllic, peaceful day. We
Yeah.
came home and had a wonderful lunch, and they had a nap, and I did my work, and all good. You know what I mean? And the pandemic that's occurring in the world for me personally right now, and hopefully it'll remain that way, is a fiction. But and that's that dynamic between really good fiction and reality, is that really good fiction also has a bit like a claim on our reality too. There's a bit of reality in the fiction, and there's a bit of fiction in our lives. And what I'm saying is not anything new. I'm sure this is a pretty well thought through idea, but in your case, it's kind of more real, so to speak.
That's interesting.
You've actually written a piece of fiction at a time where the reality is catching up.
Maybe I should reach out to some media tomorrow. It's an interesting idea.
I think you should. Re- excerpt, op-ed, media, and if you know anyone at local Israeli media, that'd be a good place. Like Times of Israel, Tablet, Jewish media, like the Israeli or Jewish writer, however you want to cast yourself, who wrote a book about a pandemic and is publishing it now. And you don't necessarily have to say shopping it around. It's like it's coming out kind of soon. Get that attention. Once you get that out there, I think people will come to you.
Right.
Somebody will come to you. Maybe not come rushing to you, but somebody.
Yeah. Okay.
And get on a podcast or two or three.
Yeah, that's a good call.
In other words, that is what the client that I was talking about, the publishing client, whose name is Sandy Greenberg. The professional bottom line that we came to is that no matter what date he publishes, June or September, the important thing is to lean into it right now. And I would say the same for you. Lean into the marketing of it before the publishing.
Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Somebody just sent me something. Okay. Yeah, I do have some contacts. Obviously it's a fine line between trying to take advantage of the situation, but whatever. I'm already.
It's life.
Already short.
You know what I mean? It's like you're what?
I've been shorting the market for 2 months, so I guess this isn't any more.
Good for you. No, I would say less.
Yeah.
Could you help me short the market next? Because I have no fucking idea how to do that.
Yeah, this is honestly the most I've gotten out of that finance degree in a long time.
Right. So the book, as much as you can talk about it or want to talk about it, 11 people on a cargo ship. The world has been wiped out. Everyone's effectively dead. Okay. Now what? In terms of the book, now what? How do you move that from there to anywhere else?
Yeah. So, the idea is that it was wiped out sort of deliberately by an organization who sort of eco-terrorists or something, or you could call them something like that, who felt like the world was just fucked up beyond repair.
Humanity.
And the humanity, and so we needed another chance.
Right.
Kind of a Noah's Ark story.
Right. A bit of a 12 Monkeys thing as well.
Yeah. So the people on the ship do have sort of some possibility of survival. And the real story is like, okay, so they've got a second chance. What does that look like? Because they've all got all this baggage that they took from the old world with them. So they're all sort of like tainted with all that with all that stuff, and they're going to carry it with them. And so maybe they can't really start over.
And why the number 11?
I wish there was more significance to it that I could explain. I think it just sort of like got listed all the characters that I wanted on there, and that's how it came out.
It sounds like a lot to manage, a lot of characters to manage. I mean, it's a big cast.
It is a lot. It is. That was the hardest part about writing this book. Palindrome and The Binding are both first person, and this is 11 protagonists, and it's going back. Each one's from one of their points of view. So you get inside there. Each one of them has 5 or 6 scenes or something. Yeah. So it's tricky, but at the same time, it's also nobody except for those people. So,
right.
Yeah.
And the Noah's Ark metaphor, was it deliberate or was it just a product of the premise?
There's a lot of uh, there's a lot of deliberate biblical allusions. Actually, the Noah's Ark one um, is maybe among the less less of the ones I was going for. It just sort of it just it's sort of unavoidable. But the bigger questions, the bigger issues around religion in the book are like if religion's one of the things that we should leave behind or keep going.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's the name?
It's called Daughters of January.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name of the terrorist group.
Nice.
All.
Very cool. Good name. So let's come farther back in the conversation where we started about being in Israel, and you'd said that life is better for you here. How so and why so?
I mean, I don't have anything too interesting to say about that. Just
Say the boring stuff.
I feel like, what's that?
Say the boring stuff.
Yeah.
We're good with
I
that.
feel like I'm happier here. Like the quality of life is generally better. Work-life balance is better. My parents live here. They moved here 2 years before me, with a lot of my insistence
Right.
because I knew I'd be moving here eventually.
Right.
I think I mean I know this is true for all people. I know it's true for me that my mindset's very much a product of wherever I happen to be in terms of priorities. And when I lived in New York, it was really hard to get out of the sort of climbing mentality in every facet, professionally, socially, financially.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I feel like that's very much less of the culture, and so it's less part of me. And I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's like an orientation thing. Like I think Kafka talked about that, the having a vertical orientation in life where the vertically oriented want to be up so that they can look down. Whereas a horizontally oriented, which in a way, a horizontally oriented life is much more biblical because you're looking out over, not standing at one point in time, up and down. You're looking out over an expanse of time that stretches deep into the past. And with the flood, in a way, is the same thing because the flood eradicated all verticality to make everything horizontal. So the Mabul was a horizontalization of life because, when you think about ego raises us up, like just like that vertical orientation so that we can look down on others, we can look down from our perch. And that was possibly the issue with Noah's generation, is that putting of the self before all else. And that's when I think about what's happening today, if you can read into it any kind of, I won't say moral, it sounds a little puritanical, but when you think about the golden calf of our generation, it's buying lots of shit. We worship the god of shit, of crap, junk, and we borrow to buy more junk, and we buy things we don't need, and we spend more money on each thing than we have to spend because it makes us feel good. And that individual, how I feel, becomes more important than anything else in our existence today. And that's the culture we live in. And when people complain about politics in America, I think it's less so in Israel, but it's still the case here. I kind of think to myself, what did you expect? I mean, you've created this. You, individual person, have created this. That's my spiel, my Jeremiah.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about, I mean, the situation is terrifying, but it's also really elucidated a lot of things. It's made a lot of very abstract things very concrete.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the trade-offs between, freedom and freedom and sort of between, no government control and total government control.
Yeah.
Like it's like we're all isolating, and right now I think we all agree it makes sense to save lives. But then at some point, obviously none of us would be okay isolating for 5 years to save lives,
Right.
because that's, that is also our life that we're
Yeah.
sort of. So, and like in economics, there's this, I'm sure you've heard of this. There's like, every like public health organization or economic think tank has to come up with a monetary value of a human life.
Right.
Often quite abstract, but
Yeah.
in this case, it's like a real value. Like we're trading, having an economic trade-off for a health,
Right.
for health reasons. But then what's the, how do you compare the two?
Right.
What's the cost of somebody losing their job? How many people lose their job is worth one death? And like, these are like real. It's pretty crazy that this is like, I mean, if we had a competent leader of the free world, they'd be grappling with this stuff. Probably don't, but as individuals, it's these like real like philosophical debates of suddenly come home. Like, do I walk out to get a cup of coffee? Like, is the cost of my mental health like worth the, I don't know, infinitesimal chance of killing someone?
Right.
What's the risk of me leaving my house on a normal day? Is this more significant than that? It's
Yeah, and we all drive to work every day, or a lot of us
right.
do, and that's the biggest risk we'll take, most of us in our lives statistically.
For
And we
sure.
don't think twice about doing it. I mean, some of us do think twice, but most of us don't. And a lot of other scenarios, such as what's the relative value of a life according to an age of a person?
Yeah.
Is a 2-year-old's life more valuable than a 90-year-old's? Or 60-year-olds? And what if the 60-year-old is a cancer researcher? On and on and on. And all of a sudden, the thought experiment of the trolley that's off its
Right.
tracks or lost the brakes or whatever has become horrifyingly real. On the one hand, on the other hand, when Italy, I just saw, is not giving ventilators to people over 60.
I saw
If
that. I
that's
saw that.
if that's true, if that's true, they are reaching a completely new phase of this
Yeah. Yeah.
whole nightmare, because you're
But
condemning
yeah.
the people to death. If they need to be on a ventilator and they can't be on one, they will just die. But on the other hand, there are people who also need those ventilators who are not 60 and whose chances to live are greater. So how do you make that decision? And I don't know. And that's why when I think, as a religious person, when I think about the Torah and the sanctity of life, as to say, this is I was listening to Elon Musk video where he talks about prime principles. Don't think by analogy, think according to prime or fundamental principles.
Mm.
And in that case, the fundamental of the fundamental principles is life. The sanctity of human life, the value of human life, regardless of production or productivity or anything else. But still, the decisions have to be made. It doesn't skirt anything. That's the hard part. That's where
Yeah.
that's the snag. We can all talk about sanctity of human life, but the doctors actually have to decide who's going to get
I've
it.
Yeah. This probably sounds like very. This sounds like an enormous amount of hubris, what I'm about to say. But I'm always
Lay
like
on.
I'm like a, I think I have a streak for the fatalistic. Um, it's kind of why I'm into writing dystopian stuff.
Yeah.
And I sort of, like they say, like I've predicted like 10 of the last 3 catastrophes. And this one just finally happens to be something that's aligning with my expectation of the worst case scenario. I feel
Mhm.
like I've I feel like I've finally
You nailed this
have
one.
procrastinated. How do you say procrastinated?
Prognosticated.
Prognosticated. I finally forecasted this accurately, and I feel like I've been a week or two ahead of where this is going at every turn. Again,
Yeah.
this sounds like an enormous amount of hubris. I just feel like this particular situation.
I don't think it's hubris. I think it's people who live with a certain mindset, a certain kind of it's an anxiety, I think, speaking for myself, an angst. When you get used to living with angst for a long, long time, you start to see how things can unfold. And that becomes an expectation inside you. Again, speaking for myself. So when this all started, and I'm talking about in like, I don't know when it was, early February, definitely. I was telling my wife, Jane, when you go to the grocery store, buy extra gloves, buy extra food. But 2 months ago, and she wasn't really taking it that seriously. Not many people were, but someone who is also kind of a high anxiety. And I noticed this pattern that people who live with anxiety, when a crisis emerges, they become calm relative to the rest of the society because they're used to the feeling.
It's funny. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel that different from daily life. And maybe it's a little bit, the volume's a little turned up. But I noticed I was once stuck in a coup in Honduras, and it was bad, and I was in the wrong place for that to happen. Stuck in a 24 hour a day, all day long curfew. You could not leave the hotel, and the,
Well,
the the coup was happening on our street because it was a neighborhood where all the diplomats were. And I'd never felt so calm. I never felt so. I went onto the balcony. There was like shooting down there, tear gas, and I meditated out there in a completely distraction-free mode of mind. And I think that's what it is. I think that certain people get used to that feeling and
hmm.
they learn how to think it through because they're comforting themselves by thinking it through in a day-to-day scenario.
Uh-huh.
So I don't, which is not to say that's what it is for you. I just don't necessarily think that it's hubris. But before we wrap this up, because I know it's been longer than we said, the question that I really want to ask you is, what does it mean to you to be a writer at all? What does it mean to you to be writing apocalyptic work or mystery or whatever comes after this book? What does it mean to you, and what do you think it means to the people around you and to your readers?
Um, for me, it's almost like for me, it's almost like it's like eating or drinking or like using the bathroom. Like it's just like it's a part of my daily life which I have to have. If I miss a day of writing, like I'm in a foul mood all day. Um, that's like at the basic level. It's like I've been doing this. I've been having like a basically. I've been on a routine for so long of six mornings a week of writing. That's why my day exists.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and I think I originally, if I had to guess, like why I do this so compulsively. Um, I think in one way it's a form of self therapy. Like I'm not writing anything which is remotely therapeutic,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's getting your like um, your how can I say this? Accurately, I'm sure this sounds familiar to you as a writer as well, but sort of accurately portraying like the things that are in your head is like a deeply uh, cathartic experience,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is um, yeah, my dad who's fairly religious would say that you're sort of becoming a vessel for the just sort of like channeling like godliness or spirit right through you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's sort of an ecstatic experience when you get it right. And maybe that's how it started. And at this point, I've gotten so used to it that it's become like it's just like, it's not like I get up and I'm like, well, should I write today or not? It's just like it's like I don't think about it. Like it's just an absolute necessity for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what it means for people around me, um, I don't know. I think I know people like my books. I don't think, if I'm being objective, I think that people really enjoyed and had a lot of fun reading my first two books, but I don't think it's. I doubt, and maybe they thought about it for a bit after, but I don't think either of them were like the kind of books that people were like, "Hey, that changed my life." Like that's. I don't have any illusions about that. I think they were mostly fun.
Is that the
Um,
kind of book you want to write at some point? Is that important to you?
um,
Do you want to hear those words?
um, 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 that's a good question. If I could hear people say anything when they were describing a book of mine, um, I think, I think probably what I'm going for more is like, hey, you made me think about something really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I would want to make people say that. I'll probably need a couple hours with a trained therapist to get to the root of what I really want people to say when they read one of my books. But I want them to say, hey, you made me think about something interesting. Maybe it affected me. I don't know. It was funny. I definitely want them to say it was funny. Even these mystery books, I find them to be very funny. A lot of people think
Mm-hmm.
they're scary. My mom thinks that they're scary, but I thought they're kind of funny. I'm not sure what it means to my readers. I think people enjoy it, but I don't think it, I don't know. And I could be selling myself short, but I don't think so. I don't think it means so much to them, at least what I've done so far. Um, I think, um, it's weird. I think people are, I don't think a lot of people have people. It's um I'm shocked that I became a person who people are surprised at their discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I still consider myself a disciplined person because, frankly, outside of writing, I'm probably one of the least disciplined people I know. Um, I can't even keep my kitchen clean. And so it's funny that, and because I've heard this a lot, people are like, "Wow, I wish I could have your discipline," and so that means something to people around me, even though to me, it's like the most ludicrous. It's like I use up all my discipline on this. I don't have any left over for anything. Um,
Well, they're saying something. It's like you're speaking two different languages. They're saying, "I wish you could have your discipline," but you're saying, "You mean you wish you could have my obsession?" Because that's really what, when you build your life around one thing, that's an obsession, which is not a bad thing. I think that's if you know David Goggins, he's an ultra endurance athlete. He was a Navy SEAL and he did a lot of crazy stuff in his life. And he talks about motivation. He says motivation is crap. If you are using motivation to do something hard, you will fail because the motivation will run out. You have to be obsessed. If you're obsessed, if you build your life around it, then you can keep going no matter what happens. The
I agree
flip
with that.
side is you pay a cost. There's a price, just like there's a price for everything else. But so I think that's what people, they hear that you wake up, they hear that you do it 6 days a week. And it sounds like for you, you're just satisfying your crazy desire that like you have, like you're saying, it's like a drug dependency,
Yeah,
intellectual dependency. And I think that's the strength, but I think it's also, uh, it requires balance because otherwise it consumes.
sure. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I have a quite addictive personality.
Hmm.
Uh, it could have easily been something other than writing. Could have
Yeah.
easily. I mean, I get pretty into gambling, so could have sort of
we're
challenging.
we're just watching Uncut Gems. Speaking of
Oh, I
gambling,
love that. I'd love that.
we're halfway through. It's really great. It's really
I
great.
love that. God, he's incredible, huh?
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. I always thought so, though. Always thought so. I mean, since Punch Drunk Love,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, that guy can act like crazy, and then he does these insanely dumb movies where you can't believe how stupid they are. But
I
I,
never liked his comedy. I always hated his comedy.
I mean, I think there are a couple winners. Most of it is ridiculous. That Al Pacino movie was like, I just feel like he's not laughing with us. He's laughing at us. He's laughing
Mm.
at people who go to watch that. That's my theory. Like, there's no other explanation. They're making
That's
something
funny.
that bad. He's just making fun of you for being an idiot.
That's good.
But this is great. We've gone half an hour over our time that I'd mentioned. So I'm sure you've got other things going on, like shorting the markets and getting ready
Markets are
for
closed, man. Sunday's the perfect day
markets
for
are
it.
closed. Right?
Yeah,
Nothing to
you picked about the
short,
best
nothing
time.
to do.
Picked about the best time to do this. Yeah, like I could. There's no way I could have plausibly said, yeah, I really can't make it today."
Right. I nailed you. Got you in that corner. You're not getting
You
out.
really- yeah, this is. Yeah, no, it's a real pleasure. Any clarifications that come up, feel free to email me or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I mean, the piece that I imagine coming out of this won't be very long. I think it's, this is all
Uh,
web, and I'm trying to keep things punchy and just like get the point across. What I would like is if you have a headshot, um, any kind of images, like 3, 4 images, like even book covers,
sure.
um, yeah, that kind of thing would be great.
Okay.
And
No,
yeah, and if you are looking for other ideas about how to kind of build a little heat around this book, Daughters of January, media heat friction, I can help you think about that. Some other tactics.
I am. It's really. I think I told you last time we met that I'm just terrible at this stuff. I'm just terrible at self promotion.
Everybody is terrible at this stuff, and even the professionals like myself, this is what I do for a living. And when it comes to doing it for myself, I can't. I couldn't. Someone's doing it for me, like someone's being my accountability
Right.
buddy. So that's just how it is.
An author, who hires you? Publishing houses hire you to promote their
It
author.
depends who it is. If it's a really big book, then yeah, it's the publisher. That's very rare because that means it's expensive. I mean, we charge a lot of money, and publishers are only going to put that into their A-list books,
Hmm.
books that they've already put down a huge advance on because they want to get their money back. So otherwise, it's the authors who do it, which is also kind of they're the ones that do it are, I admire them because they're really putting their money where their mouth is, literally. So yeah.
Like self-published books, or they have a publisher.
Um, one of like right now, there's someone who's got a publisher. It's not a huge publisher. There is a self-published author. We've had self-published authors in the past. We've had authors that are using, Scribe Media.
It sounds very familiar.
Scribe. It's Tucker Max's book
Oh,
writing company. So someone who's done that, she's a very big, well-known businesswoman that she went down that route. All sorts of stuff. People coming to us from the book world, and however, the one caveat is no fiction. We've never done any fiction ever. We really wouldn't even know how to put our hands around it as an agency. It's a totally
hmm.
different beast, even though a lot of the tactics I imagine would be similar. But I think it's a blind spot for us. And I think there's a lot out there and a lot of people. It's a blind spot for everybody because no one knows how to sell fiction, really. I mean, people kind of guess. But I think it's a fascinating topic, and I would, as someone you're dealing as with numbers and finance and economics. I mean, it's a separate question. We can talk about it some other time, but the economics of publishing today, I think it's interesting because it's not black and white. It's not, oh, there's no money, there's no market, there's nothing. That's no longer, we can't say that anymore. That's a cop out because there's the
Yeah.
internet and there's millions and millions of people and millions of readers, and everyone, you just need a little piece of the pie. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, I floated around the idea of self-publishing this book.
Yeah, well, you got, it's at that question. It's the, to me, it's about framing it. You got to think, why am I doing it? Am I doing it for fame, fortune, or freedom? If you're doing it for,
Right.
if you're doing it for money, self-publishing might be more worth your while, unless you're getting a big deal, a really big deal from a publisher. Because
Yeah.
if you can find a way to push a book out and you're keeping a bigger share of the revenue per book, you know, it could work in your favor. So, but again, no one knows.
Yeah. I just feel like yeah, I feel like the publishing industry is one of these dinosaurs that's like crusted up and like just nobody's put it out of its misery yet. Like it's like, well,
Yeah,
a lot of these institutions are just like they've outgrown their use.
totally. Yeah.
And
They're like the record industry was 10 years ago. Like the music
right.
industry, like kind of holding on to an old model, desperate to hold on to that legacy and those all the storytelling that they tell themselves about who they are and what they do. Not
Yeah.
able to really think about what the new model is, and just kind of hunkering down in their prestige, you know. And
Right.
even that's kind of gone. Like no one really gives a shit anymore about penguin, Viking, this, that, and like who knows what that means, except it within
True.
a tiny world. Like if you're in
Yeah.
that bubble, then you know. And if you're not in that bubble, you don't know. You don't care.
It's true. And the other thing that we didn't quite, I think the next step of talking about what's the cost of a human life is while you're sitting here, in your fucking sweatpants for days on end. And the next logical question is, so what's my life worth?
Yeah, that's true. That's a
You
good
know,
point.
what is this day worth?
Yeah.
What's waiting, waiting on my ass for somebody else to publish something of mine worth. How's
Yeah.
how's yours going, by the way?
Well, it's since the draft that I sent to you, I actually started to rewrite it. Um,
Again.
well, it's an edit. Like it was like a style edit. And what
Okay.
was that I shaved off 20,000 words from the 100, actually more. So
Wow.
I'm finishing up that now, and I'm very happy I did it, because to get rid of that kind of clutter is amazing, and still and have a story strengthen on account of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I've reached out to agents. I've started that process, but when I restart that process, I'm gonna do it a little bit more along the lines of what I was just suggesting to you. I don't want to go in naked. I don't want to go to an agent naked, be like, here's, open the robe and here's my book, and hope that they're not going to think I'm a pervert. I want to go and be like, check out my fancy suit. You know what I mean? I think that's the only way. And that's the thing that I've started to understand, is that art is about context, and you can't escape that. You can't, I'm thinking, Grimes, who she is?
Yeah.
She's like a pop artist. You hear the music and you're like, everyone talks about Grimes, this is amazing. And then you hear the music, you're like, okay, it's pop music. It's really poppy. But when you look at the context, when you look at this self-made kind of dark, artsy thing, then it's got an edge, then it's got a charge.
Hmm.
And I think that's what it's about. When you want to connect with an audience, you have to connect them to some kind of alter ego. Even if your alter ego looks just like you, talks just like you, but there has to be some twist. And that's probably why you're talking so much about being a street performer, because that's a twist. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? No, there's no man bites dog in a guy writing in a room in his pajamas. There's not,
Yeah.
okay, maybe you write a great book. Even still, you got to have a compelling story for someone to pick it up and to tell somebody else about. And I think that's a key to selling books today. Where in maybe 50 years ago, Saul Bellow or whoever, even then though, when you think about Philip Roth, he was the naughty boy, the dirty naughty boy of the Jewish world, of the nice Jewish world. You know what I mean? Boom. You have a book. I never liked Portnoy's Complaint. I never thought it was anything great. I never found it readable.
That's the only one of us I really like.
I personally never connected, but nevertheless, did it warrant like a huge explosion in the literary world, the Jewish No, of course not. What it did was he was trampling sacred cows, and he put the context into the book. That's what he did. That was the beauty of that book, building context into the work. And that's what it's about to me, and why you've got something on your hands, because you've got context right now with this book.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to find out how to tell it. You got to find out how to communicate it to the world, and what world to communicate it to. That's the challenge at the moment for you, which is a good challenge, because you got the wood, you got the fuel. You just got to figure out what's the kindling, and how to strike the match.
Yeah. I've thought about, I don't remember if you remember telling me this, but it's actually resonated with me a lot since we met for lunch, when you said you just got to get it in front of 10,000 people. And then you can tell if it's good enough. You just got to get in front of people.
I think that is true. That is true. And if you can get in front of 10,000 people, you've done your job as a marketer of your own work. However, getting it in front of 10,000 people, I think is more easily effectively done if you're telling them a story about yourself.
For sure.
Through the work. You know what I mean? Like the story's about you, and the work is the kind of hors d'oeuvres. Not the other way around. That's the flip. That's because you're more than one work. You're more than one book. You're a whole oeuvre, don't know how you say that, of works, and it'll progress over time. It'll change over time. That's what you got to be telling the story about. And then you're not just writing books either. You're doing a lot of other things. So try to understand that story about yourself. And in this case, you can just start telling it tomorrow. That's what I would do. I would be like, this is fucking burning under your ass, get that excerpt out there, get that. If you're telling a story, I didn't mean to write a pandemic book at the same time there was going to be an epidemic. It just fucking happened. That's crazy. It's like, people are like, okay, that is crazy. That's weird. So, maybe like Tel Aviv One radio podcasts or Times of Israel, start where you can, start where you know people, and go from there. Or tease out an issue from the book that you can apply to what's happening today, and write an op-ed or write for Medium or whatever. But we can discuss that at your leisure.
I would like that. Yeah. This is, I got to get off my figurative ass and do something with this.
Yeah.
I've actually just started writing a new thing and just sort of kind of left that more or less to the side, which is probably stupid.
Well, it's natural. It's your instincts. It's your reflex as a writer to do that. But you can't let that happen, because it'll be self-sabotage if that's what happens, because no one's going to come to rescue that book.
Right. Yeah, this is the time.
This is it, man.
I got time. I'll turn it over. I might hit you up for some with some questions, run some stuff by you.
Yeah, do that. And the other thing that you can do, and I can do, is think about how we can bring people together in our own little mini scene that doesn't exist in Israel, to my knowledge, of English language fiction writers in Israel. That helps, because that gets juices flowing, people connected, people helping each other. So we can think about that. Maybe, I was going to suggest us doing a meetup in Tel Aviv. That's not happening for the foreseeable future, but we can maybe do a digital meetup. This might be a great time for that.
I'm down. I think I told you, you're the only other English writer that I know, I think, like the only one I would want to be in a group with.
We got a club of two. God forbid one of us should leave. But let's think about how we can make it happen. We can find, I know a couple other people. We can just get on a chat and just have a conversation on Zoom. It's
Yeah.
like the easiest thing. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man.